Welcome back, and what we're going to talk about now is the equipment required for learning to sound a bugle. Now, probably the most important part is the bugle itself. The bugle that we need is a B flat tunable bugle. So what makes it a tunable bugle? Well, the answer is this slide you can see me pulling in and out there on the end of the mouthpiece. That is called the tuning shank. The purpose of the tuning shank is to enable more than one bugle to tune to each other. So if you're sounding as a pair or more, the sound is a lot sweeter. If you're not able to tune to another bugle, it can sound terrible, even though you're both playing very well. So the key thing is a B flat tunable bugle. If you don't intend playing with other buglers, then obviously you don't require it to be a tunable bugle. However, you need it to be a playable bugle. Just be aware that there are lots of ornamental bugles out there, the ones particularly with a badge that's fixed on. Now, some bugles are brass and some are silver. What's the difference? The colour. So all bugles are made of brass, unless you've got lots of money, of course, and they silver plate them, the same as this one here. So the reason you've probably noticed that I wear gloves is to protect the silver plate. If you let the acid off the hands get onto the top of the bugle, it definitely wears out the plating and it looks unsightly. So you probably notice that whenever I'm handling my bugle, I wear gloves. So that is a second bit of kit that is really necessary when handling a silver bugle. Okay, let's have a look at the parts of the bugle then. So we've already mentioned we have a mouthpiece and we have the tuning shank. So the bugle consists basically of a big tube that's curled round, and at one end it's got what we call the bell end. So a couple of things to note when you're using a tunable bugle. The tuning shank, when you put it in, is secured by means of a keeper screw. Make sure that you only nip the keeper screw up. Don't over tighten it because it can easily thread out, and they do. So the next piece to the bugle is the mouthpiece. Okay, when we put the mouthpiece in, we just place the mouthpiece into the tuning shank and a little twist. That is all that is required. What you don't want to be doing is smacking the end of the mouthpiece into the tuning shank. The reason for that is it will flare the end of the tuning shank, which means that you will get air leakage, which means you won't be able to sound the bugle correctly. Okay, so that's the parts of the bugle: the mouthpiece, the tuning shank, the bugle itself, and the bell end. The mouthpieces we'll talk about in more detail a little bit later on. The next bit of kit that's useful to you is the tuning device. Now the tuning device, I've got one in my hands here, and basically when we blow through the instrument, the bugle, what this will do is tell us which note we're hitting. Very useful when you're trying to practice hitting a low C, a middle C or a high C. The other piece of equipment they're going to need is some ear defenders. particularly if you're sounding in a small room or if there's a large group of you playing together, you need some form of ear protection. If you're playing your bugle at home and you like your neighbours, you may want to consider buying a mute. Now notice the shape of this mute. It is cone shaped. That is the only type that will fit inside the bugle. And as you can see, it fits fairly flush. You can see an hole in the middle, that's allow the air to come out, but it does reduce the noise considerably. If you don't like the neighbours, then obviously you don't need one of those. If you can't find a mute, then some of the lads, what they use is a tennis ball. They just put a tennis ball in the end of the bugle just to mute the sound. So they're the main bits of equipment that you need: the bugle, the mouthpiece, the tuner, the mute, and the ear protection. I'll be talking about each one in a bit more detail in the next videos. Thank you for listening.